Now, two things are said to be certain, and one of them is taxes. You might have heard that decision from the Federal Executive Council. It's a proposal, actually, to increase the value-added tax in the country from 5% to 7.2%. That's right. The Minister of Finance said this is in order to increase revenue generation, especially for states who get 85% of that. You may also have heard the controversy and reactions that have trailed that particular announcement. But the big questions are, how does that affect you and I? And is this the right way forward? Well, let's speak to the experts. I'm being joined this morning to my immediate right by the president of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria. She's also the president of the West Africa Union of Tax Institutes, Dame Olajumoke Princip, Simplis. Right, and just to my far right, I have Mr. Uche Onu. He is the Executive Secretary of Consumer Rights Project. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to begin with Dame Simplis this morning. Ladies first, they say.
Okay,
now, you have heard this decision, this proposal. What do you make of it?
I think it ought to have come earlier than now. It should have come earlier than now. Now, let me explain. The VAT Act 102 came into being in 1993. It took effect in 1994. That's some 25 years ago. The conception at that time was that going forward, it will increase gradually. Nothing has happened till now. A child of 25 years old is an adult. So many changes has gone through that child. That is what ought to have happened, but it never did. Now, you remember that during the time of Obasanjo, an increase was made to 10%.
That's in 2007?
Yes, it was aborted. And I think going forward, we should look at amendment to our tax laws.
So you agree with this proposal?
Yes, I do.
5%
I do.
to 7.2%?
Yes, I do.
So perhaps you're part of the people that are saying this is a right move in the right direction?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Let's speak with Mr. Onu. Your thoughts?
Well, before I start, I think there is a popular saying, even in the scripture, that says there is time for everything on the earth. Time and purpose. You see, we have that culture in this system where anytime we want to do something, government cycle, we always like to compare with other clients. Like we are listening to the briefing by the Honorable Minister of Finance, where he was making mention of neighboring countries like Ghana, that our FAD regime is going below and lacking behind. But when it comes to infrastructural development, they seem to close their eye to that other side. Like Madam has said this morning, that a child of 25 years is supposed to be. When we canvass for this kind of argument, we do take into account developmental components of the society. Our roads, our infrastructural development, talk of the minimum wage that we have been grappling with, 30,000 naira minimum wage, has it been implemented? So to us, who are consumers, because come what may, everything stops at the board point of the consumer, Nigerian consumer. We say that it's not only untimely, it is anti-people, it is anti-consumers. At this point in time, when we are grappling with so many things, look at the issue we are having in the electricity sector. Whether to increase on the tariff or not, everything resolves around the same minimum wage of 30,000. I mean, why do they want to, emasculate the consumers to death? It's not done that way.
When you say consumers,
yes,
I mean value-added tax,
that's right.
As it is,
yes.
is not on every good. So when you say consumers, perhaps you should clarify what kind of
because VAT, consumable goods, I have read the act very well. I have some exceptions, goods that are exempted under the items, like pharmaceutical, medical.
Okay, maybe she should just clear the air briefly.
Come in here. You see, when you talk about consumer good and all this and all that, I think we need to understand the basis of value-added tax. Value-added tax is on goods and services consumed. It then means that if you do not consume that good and service, you are not going to pay. That is the essence. And that is why I'll give an example. That is why even in the VAT Act, you have exemptions. Basic food items, educational materials, baby food, medicine and medicaments, pharmaceutical raw materials and products, and, you know,
Okay,
these
perhaps
are the basic. Now,
if I may jump in, I think perhaps now might be a good time to go through some of those, goods that are exempted from VAT. We actually compiled a list of them just to sort of, buttress
Okay.
this conversation. And there you have it. These are the goods exempted from VAT in Nigeria. Just like you said, all medical and pharmaceutical products. You have antibiotics, gauze, bandages, etc. Then you have basic food items. I'm sure that is a major concern for a lot of Nigerians. And according to this act, for the purpose of VAT, basic food is defined as any unprocessed staple food item, whether or not it is packaged. You have examples like meat, fish, beans, rice, and etc. We also have books and educational materials. I mean, that list goes on and on, baby products. But let's look at not just goods. We have services that are VAT exempted. If we could just keep to that part. The services that are VAT exempted in Nigeria include medical services, services rendered by community banks, and we still have goods. But then just to sort of paint a picture to see how this will affect you and I. So let me just let you land. That's what we have at this point. So please land.
For example, when you talk of basic foods item, nothing stops you from going to the market to buy whatever you want to buy and cook.
So I won't be paying VAT on that?
Yes. It's your wedding anniversary, you gave your wife 10,000 naira. My dear, I want to eat pounded yam, egusi soup and all that. Fine. Nothing spoiled, no VAT.
Thank you for that idea, by the way.
Now, let me also tell you, now you look at your wife, beautiful woman, let's go to Transcorp Hilton for dinner, it's our wedding anniversary. You can afford it. You go to Transcorp Hilton, you pay VAT on the same food that your wife will have prepared with 5,000 naira or 10,000 naira. So it is what you consume.
But why do experts say that it will weaken Nigerians' purchasing power? I mean, this is on the front page of a daily this morning.
Now, let me also explain that. You know, when we are talking about all these things, it is a lot of going forward, going backward. And we at the CITN have always said, let us move away from direct taxes to indirect taxes, so that it is what you consume that you will pay taxes on. Now, the other leg of this increase should have been, and I hope it will still be when we discuss these issues, that companies' income tax will be reduced, the rate, bottom line, personal income tax rates should also be reduced. That releases
to balance the
yes.
Oh, at least you agree on that.
That is the issue that we really need to focus our attention at. Then we also look at the realities of all these things. What happens? Now I'm happy about one thing. We are all talking about taxation. It means that we are feeling it. It is when you feel that you can call to question. When you call to question, I'm looking at a situation where you pay, and then you ask the authorities what they are using your money for. I'm looking at a situation where we can have, for example, a pressure group of taxpayers. States, in this equation, federal government gets 15%. States get 50%. Local government gets 35%. Now, the people within the state and the local government should now take it upon themselves to say, okay, now I'm paying. What is in it for me? We should have that pressure group. Because the problem we are having is, right, there's no light, there's no road, and nobody is talking. Because we were using oil money.
But he just mentioned
we were using oil money, and now that oil money is leaving us, and I hope the oil money leaves us for good, so that we stay on taxation.
I'm sure a lot of people will not agree with that.
No, because we stay on taxation. We cannot run the economy. We cannot run red economy. Okay. We need to run green economy.
Let's go to Mr. Honor. Now you've listened to her submission.
Well,
do you still agree that this is not the time for it?
With all due respect, let me talking from a standpoint of a professional, as a taxation agency or body. In fact, when looking at the paper you just showed, Nigerian Tribune of today, you could see that the major representative of the people like NLC, Nigerian Labour Congress, Nigerian Employment Consultative Assembly, and even our group and other major consumer advocacy groups, we have come to say that this proposed increase in VAT at this point in time is untimely. Because an average Nigeria, there are many other things they are grappling with. Now we have talked about, giving an example of food item, what of issue of rent, house rent, building materials, do they come under the exemption of VAT? Because we know that the major problem we have in urban cities like Lagos is issue of accommodation.
Just to be
Yes.
clear, that there's another visual we have for you
Yes.
that shows other exempted goods and services.
It's accommodation,
House
building
rent.
no.
House rent is actually part of that.
Building materials, are they there?
Okay, well, that's
Building
you said house
materials,
rent.
because it's from building materials the landlord will take into account before fixing rent. Are they there? So other things, minor things that average consumers, average the purchasing power of average Nigeria, are they, taken into account? Because when we begin to do all these things, no matter how, in the production chain, as we know, it is the man at the lowest ladder who is the consumer, because consumption constitute the last chain in the production process. Whatever thing you do, it will be the one that will absorb whatever shock you see in the system.
Okay, so that you have that last item says house rent is exempt.
I'm talking about building materials.
Right. But
Building materials
and
different from.
I mean, when you pay rent,
Yes.
it's not expressly stated that you're paying VAT. I'm sure you know.
I'm talking about building rate that the landlord use in building like cement. All
You now
those,
said eventually when people want to
good,
pay
the
house rent.
house.
But it's not
What I'm
exclusively
saying,
put there.
though, before you feel that the landlord will take into account.
So you're saying the landlord will
Of
put
course,
VAT.
in fact, there are factors before fixing rates.
There are some of these issues
There are
we need to
factors.
highlight.
Building-
but
that's
we need
what most of them say.
Mr. Onu, you just listened to the FIRS boss talking about what appears to be the case in other countries. And I mean, there's that conversation around Nigeria's VAT being the lowest ever. So what do you
Like I have said earlier on in my intro to this program, I said the idea of officials, government officials, always making comparison when it comes to issue of placing a burden on Nigerians. They're making comparison to other countries like Ghana. But when it comes to infrastructural development, like the roads, electricity, in this country, they don't mention it. That is the area.
So you're saying they should not make that
They
comparison?
should not, when it comes to placing burden on Nigerians, they always like making, that in countries like Ghana, South Africa, that they pay so. But when it comes to measuring infrastructural development, why don't you make comparison of the roads in South Africa, electricity supply, how, medical equipment, how people are looked after there?
That doesn't change the fact that this
So
is still
what I'm
the
saying, in
truth.
effect, is that they shouldn't be comparing advanced land that have developed. It's in developed economies like that the issue of taxation, when you bring it, people will easily buy into it.
You know what?
That's what we are saying.
Let's just try
Not
to see
in
what
a
his-
developing, where neglected society, where most of our challenges, people are still grappling.
Right. So let's see these figures, even though you're saying we shouldn't compare, but we have
That's
to
right.
just to take a look at what obtains in other countries. I mean, he said
It
that
should be
people-
done holistically.
So
That's
let's
what I'm
let's
saying.
let's
Let me-
let's see
let-
the
let me-
figures one
okay,
moment.
let's see
It's
the
on the screen. So for the DRC, that's the Democratic Republic of Congo, VAT is 20%.
That's right.
For Morocco, it is also 20%. Senegal is the same, 20%. If you go to Cameroon, neighboring Cameroon,
That's right.
it is 19.25%, just
Okay.
a few digits off 20%. And in Algeria, it's 19%. Right here in Nigeria, don't let's forget, it is 5%. There, we have more for you. I mean, you can
We are
go
not-
through that list.
What of
You see
GDP?
18%.
What of GDP?
18%.
That's right.
And it goes on and on. I mean, the issue here is
GDP, let
is
us show
VAT.
compare GDP.
The issue here
When they are
is
doing
VAT.
the issue of communication, let us show the teledensity. How the people over there, it's not just selecting an area that we are.
But
the
speak to this.
GDP.
Speak to this fact.
We are not. It's
See,
not in doubt.
Right.
Let me
But
say-
they should do, the comparison, holistically.
Right.
In our GDP, what is Nigerian GDP compared to all those countries?
Right.
An average living standard of an average Nigerian.
Before these countries got to this development stage, they have paid their dues. People have paid their taxes. Are we paying taxes in Nigeria? Are we paying taxes in
I
Nigeria?
mean, you are the CIT and you should tell us,
Yes.
are we paying taxes?
No, we are not.
Even though the FIR says that we're reaching 40
the
million.
Constitution says, as a Nigerian, Section 24, Part 2, F, as a Nigerian, you must declare your income pay your taxes adequately as and when due. The same constitution says government should to provide security, education, this and this. And it is when you do that that you can call the government to question. I always cite the situation of the Agbekoyas. They fought. They fought because they were paying taxes. And what happened? Government listened to them. Why did they fight? Increase in tax. What was the issue? Tar our road to our farms. Then we will pay. And the fight was on.
So you're talking about accountability, as it were. People should, but then there's also this issue of people saying that some companies collect VAT and they don't remit this VAT. And that's also a major challenge.
It is a major challenge. That is structure. That is the duty of authorities.
That's the FIRS?
Yes, FIRS, yes. It's their duty. And, well, I would say they are doing a lot about that. Thank God that taxation has been brought to everybody's consciousness now. It has been brought to everybody's consciousness. The e-transact, e-everything, IT has brought everything open. And I believe that going forward, Nigerians will not have a place to hide.
Right. I would also like to come to how Nigerians react to taxation and how well Nigerians comply, because I believe that that's part of the things you do at the CIT.
Yes.
But I'd like you to speak to this, Mr. Onu. So there's this talk around minimum wage. I mean, the president spoke about that, says that minimum wage implementation building up. And there's a question of revenue generation. So if, as it were, just let's imagine, this increase in VAT should hopefully be channeled towards paying the minimum wage. Do you think that's a good enough argument?
Well, I don't subscribe to that argument. You don't take something with the right hand and then collect it back from with your left hand.
That's what you think this is?
That's what it is. And exactly what I want to say. It's not as one is against paying tax to go. We are in support of it. But what I'm saying, accountability, development, and tax payment should go pari passu. All this one they are saying that you see tax authorities going from place to place, chasing people. They didn't build institution and structure. In advanced country, they mentioned Ghana, people don't go about chasing. Everything is well structured. E-payment, as soon as you get your salary, they will know a way. Like, have you ever heard somebody in America?
That's also the case in Nigeria. We also have the e-payment in Nigeria.
No. What they hardly, I mean, especially those in the informal sector.
Right.
Informal sector. Because what they do, these tax authorities, they go from office to office chasing people. When once everybody know, this is like a contract, what we call contract. You keep to your own terms. The other person will keep to his own terms. That is just social contract. When once the government does what it's supposed to do, of course, it behoves on the principle of the people, to do what is expected of them. And again, and thank God them, it says, tax person, there's what we call principle of taxation, which must be abided. There are some things that, principle of justice is there, economy, ensuring that those things must be adhered to. Convenience. They're all there, about 6 or 7 of them, principles that must guide any taxation principle in any society. So we don't just come and single out anything and impose. And when we do that, we should take into account the other components of the sector. Like we are talking about now, electricity tariff. People are battling it with Nigeria Electricity Regulatory, because there is also, where do they get all the income? Is it not from the same the minimum wage of 30,000? Where do they expect Nigerian workers to get all this? So that's why critical stakeholders in the economy, like you have seen, NLC, NECA, Consumer Advocacy Group, we are saying nobody is against increase in taxation, but there should be a corresponding duty on the part of government so that this thing will go, as you service me, I will pay my tax.
So I'm just curious.
That's what we want.
There's obviously an issue with revenue.
Yes.
As much as we seem to be generating a lot, it appears as though we're not generating enough. So, I mean, you have said that you're not...
They should also cut costs. You don't need to do that.
So
most of the aids, they do employ, some of those expenses, they do.
Which is my next question. So what areas do we begin to look into if you're saying that this is probably not the way forward? So how do we generate revenue?
They should also cut costs in governance. The way most of these government officials giving a necessary appointment, you can see some states, a state having up to 26 commissioners. For what? What are you doing with them? 58 special advisor, everybody being service from government. It's not necessary. Then the idea of, you see a governor, he wants to travel from the state, You will charter a fly, you will charter the aircraft. They are not necessary. When they begin to cut costs, you see the money that accrues to them will also help. Not necessarily as you are living flamboyant life, you also, try to dip into, emasculate the consumers in the way to, for like I was listening to the minister of, he said, part of what this increase do is to make sure they service the bailout. They bail out this in the state. You see, that the money, I read it, unless the paper I read it, that is meant to do that. I was reading it in paper.
No.
I think she wants to respond to that.
No,
I said, well, that's what I read.
it's not supposed to service
That's
the
what I read.
bailout. No.
That's what I read.
So
it's not supposed to service the bailout. What the minister said is that the bailout is a loan. And it's the central bank that gave the loan. So they should pay back. It's not tax that is...
No, he said with the increase, that part of it will be used. That's what they...
No. The increase, basically we have said the increase will go to majorly to the state and local government. And what we are saying at the Institute is, fine, the money will be released to them. They will have more money. Now, taxpayers should monitor what that money is being used
By
for.
taxpayers, you mean Nigerians?
Yes, Nigerians.
So how do they monitor this?
Now, we can form a pressure group. Consumer...
That's the type we are now. Consumer
yes,
rights.
yes, you have consumer... Yes. Let us go to this discourse, this conversation that will take place before the final decision is taken. Let us go there. Let us look at the structure that we're talking about. Let us discuss it. Is the 40% increase, is it enough? I don't think it is. What are the other leg that we are looking at? Moving from direct to indirect.
You think this increase is not enough?
It's not enough. Because,
so what would you propose?
Look, I'm looking at a situation where even at this, we'll still be looking at another increase in 5 years.
So what figure do you propose?
I would rather say 10%.
10%?
Yes. Let's go 10%.
At a stretch?
At a stretch.
So the question is
so
now,
we have...
With this increase, if I may, pardon me, with this increase, that means more money, as it were.
Yes,
we'll go to federal,
more money
federal, local, and state
government.
So the question now is, how do we now ensure accountability? You have
by
said
monitoring.
By monitoring.
Yes.
But how do we know what the state governments use it for also?
See, that is what we are saying, openness.
So shouldn't that be something we're also trying to solve?
See, we'll solve it when we go to the discourse. The stakeholders meeting.
Are you going for that discourse?
Let us now, yes.
See, you see the time when the recently bailout was given to them. They saw, most of these state governors saw it as a windfall. And you and I know, even the taxation agent, they know nothing was done with those money. Some of them, up to today, some of the states that we are giving bailout for, some of them are still owing salaries of about 20 months. So it doesn't necessarily mean more money in their hand. What it calls for is more accountability. Calling for accountability,
yes.
Not giving them more money like they are proposing. The accountability is not in place now, and we are asking that it should review to 10% so that they have more money. What of the bailout fund that was given to them? What did they use it for? That is the issue.
So do you agree that we should sort accountability first before the increase? Or
No.
you want
That's
the
right.
increase first?
No.
Accountability first.
No. We have been talking about the two should go pari passu. The two should go pari passu.
How visible is it?
The government needs money to do whatever we want them to do. Let us have the eagle eye to look at what the money is going to be used for. Let us have a structure. Look, as we are discussing, okay, these are the things that government should do with this money, and let us look at the way they are going to use it. Let's go to this discourse with our menu.
Okay, so I would like us to focus. We've talked about the FIRS. We have the state's revenue services also. What is their role in this?
The role of the state in this, because the state does not collect VAT, is to use the money they collect judiciously. And also, I'm happy that there is a lot of exchange of information between the states and the federal government. So the database should be robust now for them to inform federal government, about the companies that are under them, so that the FRS will know who are not in this database.
When you talk about database, there's also that issue of compliance. And according to the executive chairman of FIRS, he says 23,141 tax defaulters owe 254 billion naira. That's a lot.
It
so
is.
Maybe this is not more about an increment. Maybe this is about getting the taxes in the first place. I mean, if we have 234 billion naira lying fallow, so maybe we should try and get these ones first and see how well it will help and, move on with that.
That's it. The structure is in place. We get them. We get them. FRS has built that orbit to get those people in. Once they are in, what they have already owed, we will collect. What they will be owing, we will collect. What they will be doing, we will collect. And we collect more.
It's interesting. You say collect more. For the collector, I mean, tax is a nice thing to talk about.
Yes.
But for the ones paying, it's not exactly interesting. And it brings...
See, let me also tell you, VAT.
Right.
You are not the one paying VAT.
It's not the consumer paying VAT.
No, it's the consumer that is paying.
They pay, the brunt will go to
It's the consumer that is paying.
Right.
If you do not consume that good or service, you are not paying.
And so, but you said I'm not the one paying VAT.
Yeah, I'm saying that the provider is not the one paying.
Okay.
It's the consumer.
Exactly, which is, I
It's the
think...
consumer
That
that
is
is
the issue we are
paying.
saying. The brunt will be paid by consumers.
Yes.
Rather than going for this, what
And
we are saying...
The issue now is for the consumer to select what he wants to consume.
What we are saying, those of us in the consumer advocacy group, rather than increasing this, let them go after those that are owing them. Defaulters, reduce cost of governance.
Okay.
Remove something like security votes.
I agree with
when
you.
we do all this, it's not bringing more. I gave an example. The windfall that was given to them, what did they use? It's not more.
It appears she agrees.
No, I
but
agree
I'd like
with
my
you.
colleague in Abuja to come in. We appear to have a few questions for you from Abuja.
Yeah, my question is for Mrs. Olajumoke, please. One of the things that we understand the FIRS had advocated repeatedly is to increase the tax net as opposed to increasing the VAT that is being paid, that people are paying now. Even the NECA, Nigeria Employers Consultative Agency or Association, has also said, look, as far as they know, the FIRS is only covering maybe just about 10% of the capacity that we have. So is there anything, don't you think it's better to prioritize expanding the tax net as opposed to increasing the taxes that people pay?
Yes, it is important that we expand the tax net. And how do we expand the tax net? I think we are in the right track now because all the data are being harvested. And we are also looking at the informal sector so that those in the informal sector can also be brought into the tax net. So we expand the tax net. When we expand the tax net, we bring them in. But those already in tax net that are not even paying what they are supposed to pay, what do we do about them? We also bring them in. How can you explain somebody that has R1 billion in his account and is not in tax net, is not paying anything? What about the structure that provided that facility for that person to have that kind of transactions? That facility is provided for by you and me, our taxes. And he's using it, he's not even paying anything to that, to the coffers of the government. So we expand the base, we collect adequately, we also request for accountability. We request for accountability. That is very, very important. That we do.
Well, the issues that you have raised now, Mrs. Simplis, is that, look, there are people who are not within the tax net, and consequently, because government needs money, we need to increase the burden of paying taxes on the people who are already, paying taxes. I mean, some people would argue that that is not really fair. What do you think should be done now to, first of all, prioritize expanding that tax net so that the people who are already complying do not feel heavier burdened by having to pay more?
Now, we are looking at a situation where we move from direct to indirect taxes. Companies, for example, if we look at the structure of companies' income tax and say, okay, let us reduce the company's income tax from 30% to 20%, and then the personal income tax, the highest rate, to maybe 17%. We'll be going further on this. This will cushion the effect of the increase we are talking about. And the cycle is this. If we reduce companies' income tax to 30% to 20%, demand will be there because the income tax also, some percentage will be released to income earners. And companies, as they expand, they will also employ. Employment opportunity is there. Personal income tax, there is no way you won't spend if you have excess income in your hand. So you consume and then you pay VAT. And that also increases the cycle, the money in cycle, and then the collection of VAT is also improved.
We'd like to go to Abuja. Chamberlain has a question for you.
All right, thank you, Kaide. Let me just ask Mr. Steen, please. In your view, do you think that there's been a corresponding increase in the purchasing power of those Nigerians who will be affected by this VAT increase to warrant the 7.2%?
Let me explain that for people who are going to pay VAT, I think we are looking at the middle income, high net worth individuals. For majority of us, the masses, well, it will affect us slightly, but it will also discipline us to look at what we need and not what we want. It will discipline us. So we, like I've always said, we are too ostentatious in this country. Even those who don't have want to buy those things that other people have, and they don't need it. So let the people who can afford it. After all, it's a consumption tax. If you don't consume it, you won't pay. The service, you want to sleep in your house, you sleep in your house. You want to go and sleep in the hotel. Go and sleep in the hotel, you pay VAT. How many of us can leave our home and go and live in the hotel? It's the rich, okay, and the middle income earners. So I believe in it, and I think we should go.
Okay, so that's her view. Mr. Onu, on a concluding note, what is your view, especially that because we have a few months to this proposal coming into reality?
Well, my advice for the federal government is that before such an initiative is taken, there should be a wide consultation among major critical stakeholders like Nigerian Labour Congress, NECA, Nigerian Employment Consultative Association, consumer advocacy groups, professional bodies like Chartered Institute of Taxation. They must come together. And the overall interest of consumers will be taken into account. Vis-a-vis the principles of taxation, which call that it must be just, it must be flexible,
It must be equitable.
it must be equitable. All those components must be taken. You don't just wake up overnight and bring something, a policy that will bring about a dislocation in the economy. So that is my advice. It's not something that should be done hurriedly overnight, because the interest of consumers must be taken into account.
So she has suggested 10%. What are you suggesting?
This 5%.
5%.
Until other things are sorted out.
So when can we begin to...
When the other infrastructural development are in place that will cushion the effects of consumers, you can then talk of the electricity tariff, talk of other things, medical expenditure, things that consumers need day to day expenditure on the consumers.
Okay.
Their
Okay,
needs.
let
before you
me
talk
let
of
me
that.
say something.
We're in our concluding moments. If you've I understand that this is an ongoing conversation, and we definitely, will continue this conversation. Just before we go, we'd like to roll some of those VAT exempt, goods and services for you, just so you can have a view of what is VATable in Nigeria and what is not VATable in Nigeria. Just for a moment, you have goods like medical and pharmaceutical products, basic food items, books and educational, baby products, fertilizer, locally produced agriculture, and what have you. So the coming months will be decisive, I understand. But we'd like to thank you so much, Dame Olajumoke Simplis. She's the president of Chartered Institute of Taxation Nigeria, also the president of West African Union of Tax Institutes. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And Mr. Uche Onu is the executive secretary of Consumer Rights Project. He's also a legal practitioner. Thank you so much for joining us this month.
Tax. Do you pay VAT?
I do myself.
I'll come and monitor your company.
There you have it. Well,
Just let me have your card.
That's our program for today. Thank you so much for watching. I am Kayode Okikiolu.
Well, thank you for watching as well. I'm Train Berlin Uso. We'll see you next week.
Ayo Makide is my name. Good day.